Sir. No,
You don't think about it now.
we will. Just hold on a second.
Okay. I mean,
Slow down.
we'll find a good one. A good chilling, good body shape.
Yeah, wait a second. You're talking.
Mom, I'm gonna name this one Twig. After the guy from Courage, the witch. Twig. But sorry, Twig, but I don't think you're the one that we're looking for. Ooh, look at that big juicy one.
Oh, here's the candles.
What do you mean?
What's these two? Hey,
He
baby.
got out.
There wasn't there another one over here?
Maybe 2 seconds. Yes, I know there's one.
Where's the container?
Over there. I don't know. But Mom, look how big that one is. Look how huge. Oh no, this one's huge. Look at
Where's the container?
no, I don't I don't know. I was actually looking for it to cover the mosquito hawk and I was looking for it and couldn't find it. So I just said it was wrong. Mosquito hawk was more awesome. Well, the one I jumped down, I guess that's. I looked in that branch. I couldn't find it. I also looked on the branches. It's very. Oh, God, I think that one. There's these huge ones. I bet Pablo would know to get a huge one.
You just gave him a big one.
Yeah, but you know, a huge. Like this. Look how big he is.
Yeah.
Look how big he is.
Here, put them back. Oh my goodness. You really like you're all right, call me out, Veronica. You gotta do less, Susan. You really gotta do less. Okay, you gotta check in with yourself and say, do less.
She's a fast big deal. Really large. He's looking straight at the camera.
There you go, buddy. Where's the water bottle?
There you go.
I really don't understand why the container's not here.
I don't know. What do we have in the do you guys make a big one?
Dang, it's cold in here, dude.
Yeah, he needs a heat.
Can you go turn the air off upstairs?
I can.
Yeah, it's way too cold in here.
Okay, I turned down heat.
No, you just need to turn the air off.
Oh, okay, I'm back for 5 years.
Hey, we're about to do a feeding. Appreciate the like. It's like, what?
No, they're not died. No, please. It's sufficient. Mostly when we're under seas. Well, it's just sort of big ones. But big boy. And there's two. Oh, don't even go out. Little brown.
No, stop. What are you doing? Please don't touch the bugs. Please. Thank you, Susie.
Do we have this help at? Wow, we're stuck. We're not gonna do the drawing.
No, we are, but let's wait till after you eat. I got the string going up now. I need to figure out how we're gonna do it. I just wanted to see if I could get a couple people in here. So, something. Can I get a garbage can in here? Or a garbage bag or something? Like a grocery bag? When I go? No one said do that 2 years ago. I need a grocery bag.
You're supposed to do that. What?
Alright, so you don't have any grocery stuff for this.
What did you just say?
There.
What did you just say? Oh.
So you go put things in there and this over there on the table.
So what did you say?
You should be paying attention so you can know things for yourself and not rely on other people to tell you what's going on. You know? Go upstairs and grab me a paper towel. Go.
What?
Paper towel, please.
You know.
Thank you. Oh, is Uncle Dino here? Zuzu? Is Uncle Dino here?
I think he's just in the room. Wait, so why is your keyboard not coming?
Got the key.
Good morning, my best friend. Good to see you, my best friend. When will you come play with me? When? Good morning, my best friend. Good to see you, my best friend. When will you come play with me? When? Good morning, my best friend. Good to see you, my best friend. When will you come play with me?
It was really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that little boy. Did you play that for the hand? Millie literally clicked. When Millie was in here, she clicked on desserts. She went into desserts. But we're not sitting there. Yeah. That is a no lady. So she me. I don't even know this one. Okay, I didn't know that. But somebody thought like and then they resell your own thing, will they go to jail?
Oh, right.
But that's your product, and then they bought it and then resold it, and that was
Hey, Susan.
I thought they raped it.
Yeah, we make the body a little bit. Yeah, it looks good. It looks good.
And the arm that was snapped.
Challenge goes to the live. One of the things that I'll sometimes do is just go into the YouTube
And what if he found it?
one big bit of God. Reddit.
Where's he got it?
Reddit.
From
They expect you to take the bait, lash out, express yourself, prove something.
Yep.
The world is wired to provoke you. Notifications buzzing, people testing, chaos pressing in from all sides. It's built to shake you, to make you move without thinking, speak without clarity, feel without control. But what if you didn't? What if, in the middle of all noise, you could just be still? Not because you don't care, but because you've trained your mind to respond instead of react. Because you've anchored yourself in something deeper than impulse. That's what Stoicism teaches us. That your power isn't in what you do when things are easy. It's in how you hold your center when everything around you is begging you to lose it. And in a world that profits off your emotional chaos, your calm becomes rebellion. Your self-control becomes strategy. Your stillness becomes strength. So if you've ever felt like your peace is too easily stolen or your emotions too easily hijacked, this is your moment to reclaim that power, not by fighting harder, but by standing firmer, by mastering what the Stoics call the only true domain of power, your inner world. If you're ready to build that kind of strength with me, not just for show, but for your soul, please subscribe to follow a path back to yourself. Let's walk it together. 1. Don't react on cue.
What?
I'm 63. I'm a Florida girly born and raised. Yeah.
63. That's ridiculous.
Okay. And I'm a Florida girly born and raised. And
You have your ID on you?
no, I didn't bring it.
Girl, you're not 63. That's
Look, literally anywhere on social media, I'm 63.
wow. You're like insulting not just my intelligence, but the intelligence of the women here too.
Literally look all over social media. I'm 63 years old. Yeah, I went to school for medical aesthetics.
What year were you born?
63.
Who's the president in 79?
In 79.
Yeah.
I barely know who the president is right now.
She's 69.
Well,
But what?
I'm just gonna triple down on being 63.
Yeah, I mean, that's my age. So, yeah. How old would you like me to be?
When you messaged us, you wrote that you were 31, so you're obviously lying.
Well, that's my management that writes you guys. So,
Was it your management to tell you to come on and troll the podcast and lie?
probably.
Okay, so you're lying about being 63.
I am 63.
So if you're 63, what year were you born then?
1963.
That doesn't make sense because it's 2026.
Bro.
Am I wrong on the math or my math is nothing? Am I right?
I am 6.
That's hilarious.
She's lying.
Oh, you're resting. Go brush your teeth. Go brush your teeth. I'm serious. It's bad. No, it's literally not, but
Silence that unnerves people more than any scream ever could. You've probably felt it. The kind of silence that makes others shift in their seats, talk more than they should, or try harder to get under your skin. It's not emptiness, it's control. The reason some people fear your stillness is because they
can
can't
you come back to
manipulate
cricket with back on, please?
your thinking, how you'll respond, or if you'll respond at all. And that uncertainty, it exposes their need to feel dominant, to pull you into their game where they feel safe, where they know the rules. But here's the truth. Most people don't want connection when they provoke you. They want compliance.
Not
You need punch.
Hand them the script. You become a character in their scene, not yours. There's this quiet strength in pausing, Not just biting your tongue, but actually seeing the situation for what it is. Someone trying to pull you out of your peace. You don't need to swing back. You don't need to prove that you're smarter, wittier, or tougher. All you need is to not play. Because every time you respond out of impulse, out of that gut instinct to defend yourself, you're actually stepping into someone else's frame. You're reacting on their timeline. You're proving you can be summoned, triggered, poked into motion like a toy with buttons. And the cost: your energy, your dignity, your clarity. Calm isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of mastery. It means you know exactly what you feel, but you've trained yourself to decide if it needs to be expressed and when. It's like walking through fire without letting the flames touch your skin. You feel the heat, you acknowledge it, but you don't flail. You don't let the world see you burn. You hold the line. And in that stillness, people start to see something they can
Off a whole brand.
or reveal themselves. Either way, you win. Think about how often people throw little traps your way. The sarcasm slipped into casual conversation. The jokes that aren't really jokes. The compliments that somehow sting. These aren't accidents. They're tests. They want to know, will you flinch? Will you fight? Will you try to make them feel bad for trying to make you feel small? And most of us fall for it. We want to correct them. We want justice. But what we really want is for them to admit what they did. And that rarely happens. So instead of closure, we get frustration. Instead of clarity, we get caught. Again, Stoicism teaches us something powerful here. You are responsible for your response, not their action. That space between what they do and how you react.
Isn't yours? Oh, what's your job?
Or you abandon it. Epictetus once said, if someone succeeds in provoking,
I got a balcony.
your mind is complicit in the provocation. That
Check
hits
with Dominic. When is it gonna get here?
to disciplining you. It's not about letting people walk all over you. It's about choosing how and when you respond, because not every attack deserves a war. Some things aren't worth the cost of your serenity. There's a deep kind of dignity in not explaining yourself to people who are trying to misunderstand you, in not wasting your clarity on someone who's only interested in your confusion. When you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy into every small insult or sudden mood swing that someone throws at you. You start choosing your moments. When you speak, it actually means something, because your words aren't scattered like panic, they're placed like stone. And look, this isn't about being cold or emotionless, it's about being anchored. Calm doesn't mean you let things slide that matter. It means you decide what matters enough to break your silence. It means you can sit in discomfort without needing to lash out just to feel powerful. You can let someone else throw their tantrum, say their piece, even insult you, and still stay rooted. Because your identity isn't built on their approval, and your peace isn't borrowed from their validation. It's yours, built from the inside. You'll notice something wild when you stop reacting. What to do with it? They get louder. They get meaner. They start accusing you of being distant or fake or too calm. Why? Because your stillness highlights their chaos. Your quiet shows them how they really are. Your self-control reflects back their lack of it. And that mirror, it's uncomfortable. But you're not here to make others comfortable at the cost of your own integrity. This is especially true in close relationships, family, friends, even romantic ones. The people closest to you know your buttons. They know your old patterns. They expect you to react the same way you always have. So when you don't, it disorients them. And sometimes it makes them push harder. But you're not who you used to be. You're not here to prove anything anymore. You're here to live in alignment. And part of that is deciding that not every battle is worth your breath. Not every slight deserves your explanation. Some things just get a shrug and silence. This silence, though, it's not passive, it's deliberate, it's strategy, it's discipline, it's knowing that your time, your mind, and your heart are valuable, and you're not giving them away to people who haven't earned access. Because when you train yourself to not react, something shifts. You stop being a puppet, and you start being a presence. A presence that doesn't rise to bait. A presence that doesn't need to match energy. Feels touchable.
We'll eat.
Takes practice. It takes failing at it.
I mean, you want to do it? You want to do it now?
And regret it.
You can get some more things to that.
Put you back into old habits. That's part of the path. Every time you get pulled out of your piece, it's just another chance to build it stronger, to notice the trigger faster, to pause a little longer, and slowly your reactions turn into responses. Your silence stops feeling like swallowing emotion and starts feeling like owning your power. And power, in this form, isn't loud.
You said in a few hours.
It's about being
Yeah,
better than anyone. It's about being better for yourself, more stable, more focused, more at ease. Because you've stopped giving away your energy like candy at a parade. You've started conserving it for what truly deserves it. Your growth, your purpose, your peace. You've become someone who can walk into a storm and not become it. Someone who listens more than they speak. Someone who pauses, not because they're afraid, but because they're calculating.
Hello. I don't need more Sprite. Hi, Pablo. Hello.
You realize that most people's attacks come from fear, insecurity, or pain. They're not always trying to hurt you. They're trying to manage their own chaos.
You have to get a little bit closer.
That doesn't make their behavior okay, but it helps you
Or are you
release
just
the
like
need
too
to
weak for
fight
me?
every time. You can step
Is it
back,
too weak for me? Hungry?
but in understanding, that's when your calm becomes wisdom. And when you hold that kind of calm consistently,
Genie, come out here and pick up all the trash from this hallway. Like around the bathroom, one side of the bathroom.
your presence starts to
All right,
teach.
we gotta get silent. I gotta vacuum you guys. We'll be back.
Around for 4,000. When did you find your gentleman?
They are the director of their own. That's where your power
You know, I'm
lives.
on brown.
Two
Now I'm brown.
silence through the door. There's something about silence that makes people uneasy.
Brown though, too.
Not the kind of silence when you're alone in nature or curled up reading a book, but the kind that happens when
Oh, I am brown. And
one that kind of silence feels loud, uncomfortable, confronting. Why it's so powerful. We live in a world that teaches us to fill every second, to respond instantly, ourselves before anyone even asks. But what if the strongest move isn't to speak louder? Nothing at all. Silence unsettles people who need else to feel. The back and forth, the drama, the endless commentary, feel like they're winning. Because as long as you're talking, defending, explaining, they know where you are. They can track your emotions. They can predict your next move. When you go quiet, they start wondering what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you might say, or worse, what you won't say. It's not the absence of noise that disturbs them. It's the presence. Silence is not weakness. It's not surrender. It's not avoidance. It's discipline. It's the decision to step out of the storm instead of becoming part of it. Right. You don't need to interrupt to be heard. You definitely don't.
You guys.
Already made up their minds. Some things don't need clarification. Some people don't deserve an answer. Let your actions speak. Let your absence speak. Let your stillness become a message. When you sit in silence long enough, something fascinating begins to happen. People fill the void. They talk to themselves. They reveal things they didn't mean to share. That's when the mask slips. That's when silence made them uncomfortable enough to expose what's really inside. Without silence. It's about refusing to outweigh yourself. It's about maintaining your inner order. Someone else tries to throw you into disorder. But when you stay silent, you're not just avoiding drama. You're refusing that choice over time will become your reputation.
I'm your grandfather. You're very somehow in my dad.
Voice
With that. And somehow doing wait. I have to put just like you work or my doctor father because my friend Jared actually left me as a yourself.
Change their mind. It will just exhaust you. And if someone's committed to misunderstanding you, no explanation will ever be enough. That's when silence becomes not just
right. So then they our granddaughter are race. Our grandpa is on great stretch.
quiet. They don't get that emotion. They're left wondering. And that wonder, that
Instead, is a great
you in control of the tempo. You're no longer dancing to their rhythm. They're sitting there, tapping their fingers, waiting on you. And the longer they wait, the more they... Silence also gives you the space to reflect. Not every thought, not every feeling needs to be shared. Silence, you get time to figure out what's really going on before you say something you could take back. Carl Jung once said, silence is a source of strength. That's not a metaphor, that's a psychological truth. When you withdraw from the noise, you withdraw from manipulation, confusion, and external pressure. You return to your own center. That's where your wisdom lives. That's where you remember what actually matters and what doesn't. To soften awkwardness. But sometimes words get in the way. They complicate what doesn't need to be complicated. There's a reason Stoics value brevity, because clarity thrives in simplicity. And sometimes the clearest thing you can do is say nothing. There's also a spiritual quality to silence. It allows you to witness not just what others are doing, but what you're doing. Your patterns, your triggers, your impulses. When you're always talking, you're always reacting. But in silence, you begin to observe. You start to understand. That's where real self-awareness is born. Stepping back, watching your own mind without judgment. That's Stoicism in practice. By your silence, they'll accuse you of being tender. But that says more about their discomfort than your boundaries. Don't let guilt drag you into the noise you walked away from. Responsible for managing other people's discomfort with your peace. That stillness with you, not to let silence settle instead of forcing the next word. Space for connection, for truth. And start listening out of care, falling, and start being that. Strength in silence. For example, the person who speaks less often holds usually sees the path out before the other realizes there's a choice. In leadership, silence shows it earns trust because people don't follow noise. They follow direction. They follow clarity. And clarity comes from silence first.
Are you got oh, it's water. You already knew that. With Pablo. Hey!
Choose to say nothing.
Where'd Pablo go?
Progression. And the more you practice,
See on the inside of the crate. That Jordan.
it's full of patience, full of strength. Everything the noise is trying to understand. Not because you know them, but because your silence made them listen.
Still amazing. And we fought for us.
It's a message.
And
It says,
good.
I know who I am. Stand for. That's the kind of silence
Stop it!
that arms arguments, that breaks cycles, that protects peace, that teaches without preaching, that leads without forcing. And once you tap into that kind of silence, you never unlearn it. It becomes part of who you are. Quiet, steady presence in a world that's forgotten how to breathe. So the next time you're tempted to speak, to defend, you already know more than you think. You just don't know how to read the signs yet. Think about it. How many times have you trusted someone's words, only to feel the sting of betrayal later. How often have you smiled back at someone, sensing deep down that their kindness was only a mask? The truth is uncomfortable. Most people are not who they appear to be. Their words are rehearsed, their confidence borrowed, their happiness performed. What if you could live each day with a calm performed? And yet, the Stoics taught that every mask eventually cracks, that no lie can fully silence the truth that burns beneath the surface. If you dare to see beyond appearances, you'll uncover not just who others are, but who you are in relation to them. This isn't about judgment, it's about liberation. Because once you see clearly, you can no longer be deceived, and you can finally live with the strength of someone unshaken by illusion. If you feel that pull toward clarity, please subscribe. As a choice for yourself, a commitment to wisdom, to growth, and to walking the Stoic path toward truth in a world built on masks. Truth 1. Everyone wears a mask. People often wonder why relationships can feel so confusing. Why do we sometimes trust someone only to later feel deceived? Why does the person who looks the happiest often carry the deepest sadness? The uncomfortable truth is that people rarely reveal who they really are. What you see on the surface is not the whole picture. It's a mask, carefully built through years of trying to survive in a world that demands conformity. The Stoics understood this well. They knew that human beings craft personas the way a soldier crafts armor. Not because we want to be fake, but because life has taught us that showing our true selves can be risky. Think about it. As children, we learn very quickly what earns us approval and what earns us rejection. Some kids find that being funny makes them liked, so they carry that humor into adulthood, even on days when they feel crushed inside. Others discover that toughness earns respect, so they walk through life with a hardened shell, even if that shell is hiding tenderness and fear. This is why the world often feels like a stage. Carl Jung once said, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself, as well as others, think one is." The persona, or the mask, is not necessarily evil. It helps us navigate society, but it's not the truth. Pay attention to the small cracks, laugh that lasts too long, the sudden avoidance of eye contact when something personal is mentioned, the shift in tone when a sensitive subject arises. These are the moments where the mask trembles and the real person shows for just a second. Let's make this real with examples. You might know someone who always positions themselves as the strong one. They never complain. They carry everyone else's burdens, and they appear unshakable. But watch closely, and you'll notice tension in their jaw when they're alone, or the way they suddenly grow quiet when vulnerability creeps into a conversation. Their mask of strength exists to protect the fragility underneath. On the flip side, the always cheerful person, the one making jokes, smiling through every difficulty, may not be cheerful at all. Humor becomes their survival strategy. The mask of joy shields them from confronting sadness they can't bear. From a Stoic point of view, recognizing masks is not about becoming judgmental or cynical. It's about compassion. Because once you see that someone's arrogance is actually a mask for insecurity, or that someone's endless cheer is actually a defense against despair, you stop taking things personally, you stop being deceived, and instead of reacting with anger, you start responding with patience. That's the other half of this truth. It's not just about reading others, it's about reading yourself. We all wear masks, whether we admit it or not. Maybe your mask is ambition, always staying busy so no one asks about your pain. Maybe it's humor, maybe it's silence, maybe it's control. If you want to see others clearly, you first have to ask, what mask do I wear to survive? This is a deeply Stoic practice, Not self-condemnation, but self-awareness. To strip away your own illusions so you can live closer to truth. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Examining your masks is part of that. Ask yourself, when do I feel the need to perform? When do I laugh? Not because something's funny, but because I don't want to answer the real question. When do I put on strength? Not because I feel strong, but because I fear being weak. By confronting these questions, you begin to dissolve the distance between the mask and the true self. Now, let's circle back to how this helps you read others. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone who constantly interrupts. The mask says, "I'm confident, I know what I'm talking about." But if you look past the mask, you might see the truth. "I'm afraid of being ignored." Or consider someone who brags endlessly about their achievements. The mask says, "I'm successful." The truth whispers, "I'm terrified that I'm not enough." Once you see this pattern, it's impossible to unsee. And that's powerful, because it not only makes you harder to deceive, it also makes you harder to hate. Aristotle observed, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." Knowing others follows the same path. The moment you realize everyone is hiding something, not out of malice, but out of fear, you stop expecting perfection. You stop demanding authenticity on command. Instead, you learn to look for glimpses of the real self that shine through the cracks. And those glimpses, though small, are more valuable than the entire mask someone presents. And this is where Stoicism offers something more than just psychological insight. It gives us a moral direction. The goal of reading masks is not to manipulate or exploit people. It's to live wisely, with less illusion. It's to extend compassion when others seem unbearable. Because once you realize that the critic is hiding a wounded child, or the bully is masking fear, your response changes. You gain freedom. You stop being reactive. Here's a practical step you can try immediately. The next time you're in a conversation, instead of just listening to the words, observe the body language. Watch for the flicker in the eyes when a sensitive subject comes up. Notice the way someone shifts in their seat when they're uncomfortable, or the forced laugh that doesn't match the tone of the moment. These small signals are cracks in the mask. If you can catch them, you'll see the person more clearly than they may see themselves. But also, catch yourself. Notice when you slip into your own mask. Maybe you smile when you don't mean it. Maybe you say, "I'm good," when you're not. Maybe you hide behind sarcasm when you're actually hurt. The Stoic path is about living in alignment with truth, and that begins with honesty toward yourself. So the next time you look at someone and feel that something doesn't add up, don't dismiss it. Pay attention. People reveal themselves in the smallest of ways. And when you learn to notice the slips, you'll see that everyone is fighting the same battle, the battle between the mask they wear and the truth they fear. Recognizing that won't make you colder. It'll make you wiser. And it'll open the door to connections that go beyond the surface. Truth 2. Criticism is confession. It's easy to get defensive when someone criticizes you. A harsh comment, a mocking tone, a judgment that stings, and suddenly your guard goes up. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that criticism tells us something about us. But the truth, the deeper truth, is that criticism reveals more about the critic than the one being judged. People rarely attack out of pure clarity. They attack because something within them has been stirred, something unresolved, something they don't want to face. What they point at in others often mirrors what they're trying to hide in themselves. Think about the last time you heard someone endlessly complain about another person's arrogance. "He's so full of himself. She's always bragging. They think they're better than everyone." That kind of constant critique feels personal. But if you look closely, it's usually a confession. behind the accusations lives a deep insecurity. Maybe the critic fears they're not good enough, so arrogance in others triggers their own hidden longing to be admired. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What you resent outside of you is often a reflection of what you've repressed inside. This is why criticism often feels exaggerated. When someone despises dishonesty in others, it may be because they themselves struggle to be fully honest. When someone relentlessly mocks emotional people, it may be because they're terrified of their own emotions. It's projection. The Stoics would say the battlefield isn't out there, it's in here, within our minds. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're at work and a colleague constantly accuses others of being lazy. They never stop pointing out who isn't doing enough. On the surface, it looks like they're just concerned with productivity. But if you step back, you might realize this person is deeply insecure about their own worth. They fear being seen as unproductive, so they project that fear outward, attacking others for what they're most afraid to be. Or picture the friend who can't stop gossiping about how fake everyone else is. They're obsessed with exposing inauthenticity, but beneath that obsession may live a painful truth. They themselves feel inauthentic, disconnected from their real self, and gossip becomes their way of deflecting from that wound. Once you start to see this, your relationship with criticism changes forever. Instead of reacting with immediate hurt, you pause. You step into the Stoic mindset, calm, observant, curious. You ask yourself, what does this reveal about them? What are they wrestling with that makes this trait in me so unbearable for them to see? It's not always easy, but it transforms judgment into insight. It allows you to hold on to your peace instead of letting someone else's pain dictate your emotions. Here's the empowering part. This truth doesn't just help you understand others, it helps you understand yourself. Ask yourself honestly, what bothers you most in other people? Do you hate arrogance? Maybe you're struggling with your own need to be validated. Do you hate dishonesty? Maybe there are truths in life you haven't fully admitted. Maybe you're vulnerable. Criticism is a mirror. What you condemn in others may be pointing towards something you need to heal in yourself.
That's what you're
I know to go get the green and the glass.
First, if you want to grow, start by examining the patterns of
It
criticism.
needs to be like really something. That's fine, but not for the long. Yeah.
The Stoic practice here is self-scrutiny. To notice when your irritation is less about reality and more about your own fears echoing back at you. Imagine you're scrolling online and you find yourself rolling your eyes at someone posting endless selfies. Before you criticize, pause. Ask yourself, why does this bother me? Is it because I truly value humility? Or is it because I too crave recognition but feel ashamed to admit it? The more you practice this, the more honest you become with yourself. And the more honest you are with yourself, the less power criticism.
What's up, Stella?
This is where compassion enters the picture. When you see criticism as confession, you stop hating people for their harshness. Instead, you see them as human beings battling themselves. The person who mocks emotions is confessing they're scared of feeling. The person who calls others weak is confessing they don't feel strong inside. The person who tears down others' success is confessing their own longing for achievement. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it softens your heart. You may still protect yourself from cruelty. The Stoics weren't naive, but you won't waste energy on hatred. Here's a practice you can try. The next time someone criticizes you, instead of rushing to defend yourself, breathe.
It's the paint marker. What did you use for this? It should be the fat paint markers like this.
Yeah.
Not these.
This
I
feel
use this, but white, and I just little white and then I finish.
philosophical way.
And you have different colors, but
Than about your character. And if there's truth in what they say, use it. If there isn't, let it go. Either way, you win. Criticism is confession. Once you understand this, you step into a new kind of freedom. You no longer carry the weight of every harsh word. You no longer let other people's projections shape your peace. You become, as the Stoics taught, anchored, not swayed by the winds of opinion, but rooted in clarity. So the next time someone tears into you, don't just hear their words. Listen for the confession hidden beneath. It might change how you see them. And if you're brave enough, it might change how you see yourself. Truth 3. Silence is louder than words. There's a strange tension that fills the air when someone goes quiet. You've probably felt it before. You ask a direct question, maybe something personal, and instead of an answer, you get hesitation, a pause, a quick change of subject. They might laugh it off or reply with a short, vague line that feels rehearsed. On the surface, it seems like nothing, just silence. But if you pay close attention, that silence is full of meaning. It tells you more about a person's truth than their carefully chosen words ever could. Human beings are masters of language. From childhood, we are trained to use words as shields, to protect ourselves, to avoid judgment, to gain approval. We learn what's safe to say and what's better left unsaid. But in those moments when words disappear, when the mask slips for just a second, you catch a glimpse of what someone really feels. Silence becomes a confession. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius reflected, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and even when people choose not to speak, their silence still carries the color of their inner world." Think about an argument. Sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the most truthful, the one shouting, defending, insisting. They're often trying to drown out their own doubt. But the person who suddenly grows quiet when a topic hits too close, that quietness reveals a kind of truth. It's the unspoken admission. This hurts me, this scares me, this touches something I don't want to expose. Words may be manipulated, but silence leaks the raw reality. Seneca offered a perspective that applies here. Speech is the index of the mind. But notice, it's not just the speech itself, but also the lack of it. What someone chooses not to say is as telling as what they do. When someone dodges a question about their past, when they gloss over a painful subject, when they give a flat answer where emotion should be, that silence becomes the index of their fear. You're not just hearing words, you're hearing the boundaries of what they can't yet face. Consider an everyday example. Imagine asking a friend how they're really doing after a breakup. They smile and say, "I'm fine," but their voice is flat, their eyes look away, and they change the subject immediately. That silence between the words is another truth. They're fine. They just don't feel safe admitting it. Or think about a worker who avoids conversations about mistakes. They'll talk endlessly about their successes, but the conversation suddenly dries up. That avoidance is the silence that reveals the wound. This is why silence is so powerful to read. Words are often crafted for survival. People lie without even realizing it, repeating stories they've told themselves until they believe them. But silence resists polish. It slips out in the cracks. Now here's where the Stoic perspective adds depth. When you notice silence, the goal isn't to judge, it's to understand. The temptation is to label avoidance as weakness, but the Stoics remind us that all people carry burdens. Everyone has truths they're not ready to face. Instead of reacting with frustration, you can approach those silences with compassion, because chances are you have your own. Think of the moments you've stayed quiet when you could have spoken. Times you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Times you avoided vulnerability because it felt too raw. Silence connects us because it's a shared human defense. If you want to examine life, both your own and others, you need to learn to study silence. Silence tells you where the examination has stopped, where fear has drawn a line. And often, those are the very places where healing is needed. If you listen carefully, silence shows you not just who someone is, but where they're still hiding. Let's explore this further with relationships. In close relationships, silence becomes even louder. A partner who falls silent during discussions about the future may be carrying uncertainty they can't admit. A friend who never talks about their family may be holding on to unhealed wounds. The silence around these subjects is not random, it's protective. And when you notice it, you're given a choice. You can push and demand answers, or you can approach with patience and empathy, creating a space where that silence eventually feels safe enough to turn into words. And that's the empowering part. Silence doesn't have to remain permanent. With courage, silence can be broken. The Stoics encouraged speaking truth, but with wisdom and restraint. They didn't advocate spilling everything recklessly, but they did believe in honesty as a path to inner peace. Here's a practical step you can try. Next time you're in a conversation, instead of rushing to respond, pause. Listen not just to what's said, but to what isn't. Notice the hesitation, the quick deflections, the short answers that don't match the depth of the question. Ask yourself, what truth might be hiding in that silence? And in your own life, journal about the things you avoid talking about. You'll be surprised how much you learn about yourself by examining your silences. But remember, reading silence is not about exposing people, it's about understanding. The Stoics taught that wisdom isn't about control, it's about clarity. When you see silence for what it is, you stop being fooled by words alone. You start reading the spaces between, and in those spaces you discover a deeper layer of truth. Plato, reflecting on human nature, once wrote, "Wise men talk because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." But there's another layer. Sometimes wise men stay silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because the truth feels too heavy to voice. That silence is not foolishness, it's fear, and fear is always worth noticing. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize how loud silence can be. It echoes in relationships, in workplaces, in friendships. It tells you what people can't yet admit, and it tells you where you too still carry unspoken stories. The Stoic way is to see this clearly, without bitterness, to understand that silence is not emptiness, but a map of where healing is needed. So the next time someone goes quiet after a tough question, don't dismiss it. Don't rush past it. Pause and pay attention. That silence is not nothing. It's a clue, a window, a whisper of truth. And once you learn to hear it, you'll never hear conversations the same way again. Truth 4. Loud virtue signals weak character. We live in a world where appearances often matter more than reality. You've probably noticed it. People constantly broadcasting their goodness, their kindness, their values, as if they're putting on a show for the world to clap for. Social media has made this even louder. The endless declarations of purity, honesty, or moral superiority often feel staged, and deep down, you know something isn't right. Because when a person is truly virtuous, they don't need to convince anyone. Their actions speak for themselves. It's the loud signals, the constant reminders, the exaggerated performance that should make you pause and look deeper. Think about it in everyday life. The person who constantly preaches about honesty is often the one bending the truth when it suits them. The person who brags about humility is usually hungry for recognition. The person who loudly condemns others' flaws often hides the same flaws within themselves. Seneca, in his writings, warned against this very performance. He wrote, "The wise man is content with himself." That line is powerful because it points to the essence of real virtue. If you are truly virtuous, you don't need to announce it. You don't need applause, validation, or public recognition. You know who you are, but the one who constantly signals their moral superiority is not content. They're restless, uneasy, desperate for others to confirm the image they're trying to project. Let's bring this down to a human level. Imagine two people. One quietly donates to charity, never mentioning it, never seeking acknowledgement. The other makes sure everyone knows about their donation, posting pictures, attaching inspirational captions, reminding people of their generosity.
What are you doing?
If these two
Hey,
have
stop resetting my room.
it's obvious. But here's the deeper question. Why does the second
Like, all you have to do is clean right now.
It's because they're trying to convince themselves by loudly signaling their virtue. They silence the insecurity that whispers, maybe you're not as good as you think. True virtue is consistent action, not one-time performance. It's lived in private when no one is watching. It's the daily choices to act with integrity, even when no applause will follow. Virtue signaling, on the other hand, is about acts, visible moments designed for others to see. And that's the great divide. One is habit, one is theatre. This truth becomes even clearer when you pay attention to those who condemn others most loudly. Have you ever noticed how the harshest critics of immorality often end up caught in scandals themselves? It's not coincidence, it's confession. By loudly projecting their righteousness, they cover up their mission.
What is that? You completed all your chores.
Taught his students to avoid this trap. He said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That line cuts through centuries and still stings today. If you live with honesty, you don't need to remind people of your honesty. If you live with kindness, you don't need to advertise your kindness. The moment you feel the need to shout it, chances are you've already strayed from it. Loud virtue isn't about embodying, it's about persuading. Consider the way this plays out in relationships. A friend who constantly insists on how real and loyal they are may not be either. Their repeated declarations raise a red flag. Why? Because when loyalty is genuine, it doesn't require self-promotion. It simply exists. Or think of the person in a workplace who constantly brags about being a team player. If you watch closely, you'll often see them undermining others when it benefits them. Their words and their actions don't align. The louder the words, the weaker the alignment. Virtue signaling flips this upside down. It's all about appearing, not being. It focuses on reputation without substance. But the Stoic way is to focus on being, letting reputation follow naturally, or not at all. Now let's reflect on ourselves, because it's easy to see this truth in others, but harder to admit in our own lives. Ask yourself, when do I signal virtue instead of living it? Do I sometimes brag about honesty because deep down I'm afraid of my own half-truths? Do I overemphasize kindness in public while struggling with resentment in private? We've all done it. It's part of being human. The goal isn't to shame ourselves, but to recognize the moments when signaling takes over substance. That recognition is the first step back to authenticity. In today's world, where public image is currency, this truth is more urgent than ever. People curate their lives to appear flawless, moral, and strong. But the Stoic approach reminds us that inner reality matters more than outer appearance. A quiet act of integrity outweighs 1,000 loud performances. And if you want to read people accurately, this is the key. The louder they need to prove their virtue. Plato also warned against in his allegory of the cave. He showed how people can become trapped watching their appearances instead of truth. Virtue signaling is a modern version of those shadows. It looks like morality, but it's not the real thing. It's a projection, a performance, a flicker on the wall. The task is to turn away from the shadow and seek the substance. And here's the personal challenge. Strive to live your values so quietly, so consistently, that you never need to announce them. Let your actions be your proof. If you're honest, people will notice. If you're kind,
These are all things for you to say. No, I guess, yeah, maybe you're not thinking about it.
announcement required. That's the Stoic way. So the next time you encounter someone who loudly proclaims their virtue, don't be fooled by the performance. Look deeper
Obviously,
yourself. Is this lived or is this staged? And in your own life, resist the temptation to advertise your goodness. Just live it, because real strength never needs a microphone. Truth 5. People lie to themselves first.
you're leaning with me, bro. You're no freaking wheelie there.
Is this. People are not only dishonest with others, they're dishonest with themselves. In fact, most lies don't begin as an attempt to trick the outside world. They begin inside, whispered in the quiet moments of fear, shame, or regret. Think about how many times you've heard someone say, "I'm fine," when it's clear they're not. Or, "I don't care anymore," when their heart is still burning with care. Or, "I'm over it," when you can feel the bitterness sitting in their voice. These aren't calculated attempts to mislead others. They're practice stories meant to convince the self. Self-deception is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Why? Because reality can be unbearable. When the truth feels too heavy, too painful, too threatening to who we think we are, the mind invents a version we can live with. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's survival. The Stoics were deeply aware of this tendency. They didn't see self-deception as harmless. They saw it as dangerous, a kind of prison that prevents growth. Seneca warned, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" That question digs at the core of self-deception, because often the lies we tell ourselves are delays. I'll change tomorrow. I'll face it when I'm ready. I'll deal with it later. But later stretches into years, and the lies calcify into a life that never moves forward. Consider an example we all know: heartbreak. When someone has been rejected or abandoned, they often say, "I don't care." It's the easiest lie to tell. But if you look into their eyes, if you listen closely, you'll hear the tremble in their tone. They care more than they want to admit. The lie is a shield against pain, but it also blocks healing, because you can't truly heal from something you refuse to acknowledge. Another form of self-deception is pretending to be over failures. People often say, "That didn't matter," or "It wasn't important anyway."
That's true.
Wouldn't need to insist so strongly. The repetition of the phrase is a tell. Deep down, the sting remains, but the mind has built a protective story around it. This is why the Stoics put so much emphasis on aligning perception with truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed."
No,
That's the
I have to
opposite of
fix it.
self-deception.
It feels like
It's radical honesty, the willingness to see
no,
clearly.
really can't do this. I have to do this, but I don't have to follow on the front of it.
The answer lies in fear.
Just fix it
Fear of
there,
rejection,
because it needs to be
fear of
set,
failure,
right?
fear of not being enough.
Can you move the camera?
Here's the paradox. Self-deception feels protective in the moment, but destructive over time. Think about someone in a toxic relationship. They might say, it's not that bad, or they'll change. The story comforts them in the short term because facing the truth, that they're trapped in something harmful, feels overwhelming. But the longer they hold on to the lie, the more they suffer. Let's put this into real life. Imagine someone says, I've moved on, but their body's
But
still.
it's good now.
Move it then.
Or someone
Oh, yeah.
insists, I'm not jealous, while their eyes flash with envy. Or they repeat, I'm fine. So often it begins to sound mechanical. These are clues. They show that the lie isn't meant for you. It's
Yeah,
meant
kind
for
of.
themselves. And if you want to truly read people, you have to listen not just to their words, but to the tension underneath. But self-deception is the enemy of knowing yourself. That's why so many people live in contradiction, saying one thing while doing another. They insist they don't want love, but chase it endlessly. They insist they don't need approval, but crumble with
Okay, I got it.
They insist they're strong, but avoid situations that test them.
Yeah, if I put that dirt
Contradiction
thing up here, flip straight.
is mindless. They've convinced themselves of a story, and the story is running their life. Here's the empowering message. You can use this truth not only to read others, but to liberate yourself. Start by asking, what lies do I tell myself? Do I say I'm fine when I'm not? Do I minimize my pain because I fear it will overwhelm me? Do I pretend I don't care so I don't have to face disappointment? These are difficult questions, but the Stoic path is about courage. Think of the times you've denied your own feelings. Maybe you pretended you weren't hurt by someone's words, but carried the sting for weeks. Maybe you told yourself a goal didn't matter when you failed, even though it mattered deeply. Each time,
Probably
the Stoics would urge you to face the sting directly, to accept the pain without adding the second layer of deception. Pain, they thought, is part of life, but self-deception multiplies it, creating suffering out of denial. Aristotle spoke about virtue as living in alignment with reason and truth. He believed that happiness comes from living in accordance with reality, not illusion. That's why people who lie to themselves often seem restless, unfulfilled, even when they claim to be fine. Their inner life is split. They've chosen comfort over truth, and comfort never lasts. So how do we move past this? How do we stop lying to ourselves? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to your
what
own
about Pablo?
repeat
I'm
phrases
having
like,
to move the camera a bit.
That's fine if you can't do it.
ask yourself,
No, I've been
is
having to
it
move
real?
the camera. I just can't move.
The second step is courage. Have the bravery to admit when you're hurt, jealous, scared.
I'll scratch you. You can.
Would say that honesty
Hi,
without
Pablo.
of strength.
Hi.
Because once you face reality, you can work with it.
No, I'm reading the
Heal,
comment.
grow. The same goes for
Oh,
you.
I'm just waiting on.
Take their words at face value. Look for the mismatch between their story and their signals. If someone says they've moved on but can't stop talking about the past, believe the behavior, not the words. If someone claims they're fine but their body language screams otherwise, trust the tension. People may lie to themselves, but their lies always leave cracks. And if you can see the cracks, you can see the truth. Self-deception is humanity's oldest trick, but it doesn't have to rule you. The Stoics believed that freedom comes from seeing clearly yourself and others. Once you strip away the lies, you begin to live in alignment with reality. And reality, though painful at times, is the only ground strong enough to build a meaningful life on. So remember this. The next time you hear someone say, I'm fine, pause. Look past the words. Ask yourself, are they telling the truth? Or are they trying to tell it to themselves? That small shift in perception will change how you see people forever. And if you're willing to turn the same question
What part
inward,
is hurting me? Like just doing this, like turning on it like this? Or when I pinched it to like pressure it.
Oh my, probably MK off lane.
Like this. Point it sideways.
I'll go MK off lane. Can't do anymore.
it's exactly how important they are. Maybe they brag endlessly about their achievements
This doesn't
to
work.
remind you of what they've done. Or maybe they subtly,
Wait.
not so subtly, belittle others to keep
What are we
themselves
about
on
to
top.
do? Totally.
Intimidating. But if you look closer, if you peel back the layers, you'll often see something else hiding underneath. That performance of superiority. It's usually a mask, and behind it is something fragile.
You're doing like longer laces and you're really right.
Or forgotten.
You don't want like affection with this hair into this because that's when you'll get your hair pulled up.
Need to prove itself.
Sure
Seneca wrote,
he's got
How do you do?
right here, like that.
is what he's implying. Greatness isn't about bragging once you've arrived. It's about enduring the road quietly. People who constantly need to announce their greatness are usually showing you the opposite, how insecure they are about whether it's real. Carl Jung put this into psychological terms. He said, where love leads, there's no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking. Think about that. When someone seeks domination, control, or superiority, it's not because they're overflowing with confidence, it's because they're lacking something essential inside. They chase superiority to fill a void. The louder they boast, the emptier they often feel. Let's make this practical with an example. Imagine reminding everyone of their accomplishments. Every meeting, every project somehow turns into a chance for them to highlight their own value. On the surface, it looks like confidence, but if you watch closely, you'll notice something telling. They're desperate for recognition. They fear that if they stop proving themselves for even a moment, they'll disappear in the eyes of others. Superiority, not strength. It's
Alright.
Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on his own role as emperor, reminded himself daily not to fall into this trap. He
Are you getting trash picked up? You getting that table at least organized so I can come in there?
Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you.
What?
Sanity means tying it to your own actions. Superiority seekers tie their well-being to the opinions of others. That's why they constantly seek validation, applause, or control. True confidence, the stoic kind, ties well-being to inner stability, not outward dominance. We see this everywhere in modern life. On social media, people curate images of flawless success, showing only their highlights, exaggerating their confidence. But deep down, many are wrestling with feelings of inadequacy. The louder the performance, the more it reveals about what's missing. He said, the measure of a man is what he does with power. If someone uses power to lift others up, and strength is real. Strength. It's weakness disguised as superiority. Here's another scenario. Think about someone who always has to win every argument. Even over the smallest detail, they can't bear to be corrected. On the outside, they might look intelligent or dominant, but look deeper. What kind of person fears being wrong so much that they need to dominate every conversation? It's not someone at peace with themselves. It's someone afraid that being wrong makes them unworthy.
You know, I used to do your hair.
Debate is masking their fear of inadequacy. Now, here's the interesting part. People who mask inferiority with superiority don't always know they're doing it.
Right.
Often it's unconscious. But as Stoicism teaches us, defense is built on illusion, fragile. Sooner or later the cracks show. The person who constantly brags eventually reveals their deep need for validation.
You like that?
The person
Oh, you had to ride on these little
dominates every space.
Am I doing pretty good?
Why I did more people?
Going-
No, we get like
We got one fair batch.
yeah.
Pretending without being.
Mhm.
It's the foundation of peace. The Stoic challenge.
There's a new dye in there. There's a new dye. The food new dye. I say hi. Hi, hello.
Superiority.
Wait, don't move it. Wait.
Hurry
And
up.
then watch. All you have to do is squeeze and rotate. Don't let it move levels. Yeah, he's really struggling.
When do I belittle others to feel taller? These are signals of hidden insecurities, and the Stoic path is about facing those insecurities directly,
Ah,
not covering them up with noise.
okay.
In relationships,
That didn't hurt.
it's especially visible. A partner who constantly
Hey,
reminds
you
you
guys
of how lucky you
don't
are
have the
to
pizza where the dogs can get it.
voice is rarely as confident. Their superiority is a shield, often protecting wounds from childhood. Perhaps times they felt invisible, unworthy.
Yeah, you did great.
The more fragile those wounds likely are. If you can recognize this, you stop being fooled. You realize their arrogance isn't about you, it's about them. Here's the practical takeaway. When you encounter someone projecting superiority, don't be intimidated. Look for the insecurity beneath. Ask yourself, what are they afraid of losing? What are they afraid of being?
Alright, you don't.
Point you directly to their deepest fear. Once you see that, their arrogance loses power over you. And in your own life,
Couldn't
remember,
got the tail bend.
it's often a
And there's no
signal
long tail. We do a tail bend.
to perform superiority.
Won't move forward.
Myself am I trying to hide? The Stoics would say that facing this honestly is the path to strength, because when you accept your vulnerabilities, you no longer need to cover them up with noise. So, the next time someone brags endlessly, belittles others, or dominates every space,
Been running for 9.
superiority often masks inferiority. Real confidence is quiet. Real power doesn't perform. And the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need
So you guys have been here for an hour.
Hour and a half.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
fear drives most behavior. If you really want to understand why people do what they do, don't start by asking what they desire. Start by asking what they fear. Most human behavior, from the smallest habits to the biggest life choices, is guided less by the pursuit of joy and more by the avoidance of pain. It's uncomfortable to admit, but think about it. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no, just to avoid disappointing someone? How often have you stayed quiet when you wanted to speak because you were afraid of looking foolish? These aren't choices born of desire. Think about the different ways fear shows up. The person who talks too much might not be arrogant at all. They might be terrified of being ignored, so they fill the silence before rejection can creep in. The person who disappears when things get tough isn't always careless. Often they're afraid of failing, so they choose to vanish rather than face their fear directly. The one who constantly agrees, who says yes when they're screaming no inside, isn't spineless. They're afraid of losing connection. Fear of rejection drives their compliance. If you want to read people, you have to look beneath the surface and ask, what are they afraid of losing? Consider identity. The person who always needs to be in control may not actually crave control itself. They fear the chaos of losing it. The person who seeks constant approval doesn't really want compliments. They fear being small without them. The person who avoids conflict at all costs doesn't necessarily love peace. They fear rejection and abandonment if they rock the boat. Fear hides beneath layers of behavior, like a root beneath tangled branches. If you want to understand the branches, you have to look at the root. Now, Here's where this becomes powerful in everyday life. When someone acts strangely, don't just ask what they're doing, ask what they're afraid of. The boss microeye's every detail. They're afraid of failure. The friend who can't stop gossiping. They're afraid of their own irrelevance. The partner who pulls too tightly. They're afraid of being abandoned. If you train yourself to see behavior through the lens of fear, people become much easier to read. What's confusing or sure suddenly makes sense when you trace it back to fear. Aristotle believed that courage was the highest virtue because it allows all the other virtues to exist. Without courage, honesty crumbles under fear of judgment. Without courage, kindness shrinks under fear of rejection. Without courage, wisdom gets buried under fear of making mistakes. That's why the Stoics placed so much importance on confronting fear. It doesn't exist, but by meeting it with reason and fear influences not just individuals, but whole groups. Socrates of a busy life. Many people fill their schedules
Tell a song about how
because they fear stillness. In stillness, they might meet themselves, and that terrifies them. Others chase wealth, not out of true desire for riches, but out of fear of insignificance. Entire cultures are shaped by collective fears: fear of being weak, fear of losing status, fear of being forgotten. But here's the trap. Because fear is so universal, most people don't realize how much it shapes them. They believe they're acting from desire or choice, when in reality, fear is steering the wheel. Plato hinted at this when he said, courage is knowing what not to fear. Wisdom isn't about eliminating fear entirely. It's about learning which fears are illusions and which truths actually deserve our attention. So how do you use this in daily life? Start by watching the moments when someone overreacts. Overreaction is often fear spilling out. The person who gets irrationally angry at being interrupted may not be angry at all. They may be afraid of being dismissed. The person who panics at small changes isn't overdramatic.
Pablo to 4,000.
If you listen closely, you'll notice fear hiding behind
Hello?
countless ordinary behaviors. And if you notice the same in yourself. Seneca reminded
Why
us
did there help
enough
Pablo to 4,000?
before it is necessary.
I think they're new
How
tons.
suffer before it is necessary. See things in advance. That suffering creates patterns. How we interact, what we avoid, and what we chase. And often the behaviors we least understand in others or in ourselves can be explained by this pre-suffering of imagined fears. The empowering shift comes when you stop asking, what do they want? And start asking, what are they afraid to lose? That single question can reveal more than hours of conversation. Or people's greatest fears are universal: loss of love, loss of respect, loss of security, loss of meaning. These are the forces that push people into actions they can't even explain themselves. So the next time someone talks too much, disappears when things get hard, or agrees when they clearly don't mean it, look beneath the behavior. You'll likely find fear: fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of humiliation. And once you see it, you'll realize something profound. People aren't difficult to understand. They're just afraid to be seen. Have you ever noticed how quick people are to judge? Stranger makes a comment online, mocking someone's appearance. A co-worker criticizes another's work with a little too much energy. A friend rolls their eyes at someone for being too sensitive. On the surface, it looks like they're simply pointing out flaws in others. But if you've lived long enough and watched closely, you realize something deeper. Judgment says far more about the one judging than the one being judged. People project what they cannot accept within themselves. Think about how often this plays out in everyday life. The person who lacks sensitivity often struggles with their own emotions. They see someone cry easily and sneer. The truth is, they fear their own vulnerability. They can't stand the mirror that sensitivity holds up to them. Or consider the person who relentlessly criticizes other people's appearances. They might sound harsh, but what they're really showing you is how much they despise their own reflection. Judgment here is confession, just in disguise. Take another example, arrogance. When someone accuses others of being full of themselves over and over, it may not be arrogance they hate. It may be their own buried longing for recognition. They see in others what they crave, but are ashamed to admit. Here's where it gets interesting. Projection doesn't only apply to negative traits. Sometimes it shows up in what we admire. When we find ourselves idolizing someone's courage, wisdom, or confidence, that too can be a projection, reflecting qualities we long to develop in ourselves. Aristotle hinted at this when he said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." If you admire someone deeply, that admiration might be your unconscious pointing to a part of yourself waiting to grow. But in the realm of judgment, projection is often painful. Think about how often people gossip. On the surface, gossip looks like entertainment, a harmless exchange of stories. But at its root, gossip is usually projection. People bring down others to quiet their own insecurities. They laugh at flaws that remind them of their own, as if mocking someone else's failures makes their own easier to carry. The Stoic challenge is to turn judgment back onto ourselves before we aim it at others. Epictetus advised that we focus on what is within our control. Someone else's character, that's beyond our control. Our reaction to it, that's ours. And if our reaction is harsh judgment, the wise move is to ask why. What within me is being touched? Why does this bother me so much? If you follow that line of questioning, you often uncover hidden fears or desires you've been avoiding. Let's take an everyday situation to see this in action. Imagine someone always ridicules lazy people. They can't stop talking about how irresponsible others are. At first, you might think they simply value hard work. But look deeper. Maybe they themselves.
Thank whoever did the one library or find it to 100. The thank. How about it? I'm finding tape to pay of one. I'll talk a little later. Oh, he did say so tinny. So weird. Of C-Fan into blogging. I'm the with him already. See, turn it party bomb. Party bomb. I'm sorry, died. That's no reason. The AI this turn off. With T, that hard. Wait, that one. Yes. Did you have one have a heart? Yes. A T.
I don't know. I didn't look it.
No, that thing really not good. I did now I just have to take five. Oh, you should be on launch until I don't want. Dude, Pablo is shut the adventure. Dude, I hate you, Pablo. George. Georgie. Georgie. George. Georgie. Hi, Tabo. Where is everybody? Okay, dare Tabo. Okay, everybody at the top of the netting. Well, yeah, I found him.
You're okay. You did good.
Yeah, that's what I got ratted. And then when I looked back, he feet moved out of the way. Or he feet I didn't really. So where did
Seen as lazy. Maybe they grew up in a family where they never felt good enough unless they overworked. Their harsh judgment of others is really a defense against their own insecurity. But
Here,
just
everyone's talking about
this truth inward. Ask yourself,
Yeah.
what traits do I judge most harshly in others? Do I sneer at arrogance? Do I despise dishonesty? Do I get impatient with weakness? Each of those judgments might be a signal pointing back at me. Maybe I judge arrogance because I secretly crave recognition, but am ashamed to admit it. Maybe I hate dishonesty because I too struggle with facing certain truths. Maybe I despise weakness because I fear my own vulnerability. Judgment, if examined honestly, becomes a teacher. Imagine applying that humility to judgment. Instead of assuming you see others clearly, you admit, maybe what I see in them is actually a reflection of me. That shift changes judgment from condemnation into self-discovery. Carl Jung also, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Projection exists because most people can't do this. They can't accept their flaws, so they exile them, projecting them onto others. But when you begin the Stoic practice of radical self-examination, you strip away those projections. You start to accept your humanity, flaws and all. And once you accept yourself, judgment of others begins to fade. The practical step here is simple. When judgment rises in you, pause. Ask yourself, is this really about them, or is it about me? When others judge you, don't immediately react. Ask, what are they revealing about themselves? This practice turns judgment into a window rather than a wound. You stop being pierced by it, and instead, you learn from it. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to meet others' flaws with patience. He wrote, when you wake in the morning, remember you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Notice his posture. Not anger, not surprise, but calm recognition. He understood that these flaws are human and often projections of pain. That wisdom can guide us too. So the next time someone mocks sensitivity, criticizes appearances, or attacks someone else's character, look deeper. Judgment is rarely about the person being judged. It's a mirror held up to the one holding it. Once you learn to read judgment this way, you'll see through the noise. And perhaps more importantly, you'll see yourself more clearly too. Truth 9. Fake confidence hides guilt. We live in a culture that glorifies confidence. Everywhere you look, people are told to act certain, look strong, never let them see you sweat. And because of this, you'll meet countless individuals who project an image of being unshakable, the ones who walk with their head high, their voice firm, and their posture unbending. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Many times what looks like unbreakable confidence is actually a mask. Beneath that mask lives guilt, regret, and fear. The more someone performs strength, the more you should ask yourself, what are they trying so hard to cover? The Stoics warned about this kind of performance. Seneca advised, you can tell the character of every man when you see how he gives and receives praise. Watch closely, and you'll notice people who wear fake confidence often can't handle criticism. They grow defensive, angry, or dismissive at the slightest pushback. Why? Because their confidence isn't real. It's fragile, built on top of unresolved guilt or regret. A single crack threatens to expose everything they've been trying to hide. Someone who constantly insists on their own competence. They talk endlessly about how capable they are, how they always know what to do. Yet the moment a mistake is pointed out, they lash out. That's not strength. That's guilt. Guilt over past failures they've never made peace with. Their exaggerated confidence is just a shield protecting that wound. You've probably seen this in leaders. A boss who never admits when they're wrong. A politician who doubles down even when caught in a lie. A teacher who pretends to know everything even when they don't. Outwardly, they look certain. Inwardly, they're haunted by the guilt of not being enough, of not living up to their own image. Instead of facing that guilt honestly, they cover it with a mask of unshakable certainty. But if you look closely, you can always see the cracks. Defensiveness. To sit with humility. Let's bring this closer to daily life. Maybe you know someone who's always the loudest in the room, quick to interrupt, always ready with an answer. On the surface, they appear self-assured. But notice how they respond if they're challenged. Do they listen calmly, or do they snap back defensively? If it's the latter, you're seeing guilt at work. They're not really confident in their knowledge. They're afraid of being revealed as less than what they claim. Their guilt for not being as certain as they pretend becomes the fuel for their aggression. Paradoxically, this is the deepest form of confidence, the ability to admit ignorance without fear, to carry humility without shame. That kind of honesty doesn't need to perform, but fake confidence can never admit ignorance. To do so would expose the guilt it's trying to bury. Why does guilt fuel false confidence? Because guilt is heavy. People carry guilt for things they've done, words they've spoken, or opportunities they've missed. And instead of processing that guilt, instead of facing it honestly, they build a persona to cover it. It's easier to pretend to be unshakable than to admit, I regret what I've done. But the Stoics would argue that this path only deepens the wound. Plato also hinted at this tension between inner reality and outer appearance. He said, the greatest wealth is to live content with little. Apply this to confidence. The greatest strength is to live content with your limitations, to be at peace with imperfection, but the one who pretends to have it all figured out is never content. Their guilt whispers constantly, and they drown it out by projecting certainty. Here's a personal reflection worth considering. When have you faked confidence to cover something you regretted? Maybe you walked into a meeting pretending to be fully prepared when you knew you weren't. Maybe you projected strength after making a mistake because you didn't want anyone to see your guilt. We've all done it. But the Stoic way is to confront that honestly. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to align with truth. He wrote, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That applies to confidence too. If it isn't real, don't perform it. Instead, face the weakness beneath and grow stronger by admitting it. Carl Jung also warned about the dangers of burying guilt. He wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And yet, this is the only way to dissolve fake confidence. When you accept your flaws, your mistakes, your regrets, you no longer need to mask them with a performance. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to posture. It doesn't collapse under criticism. It accepts weakness because it knows weakness is part of being human. So how do you spot fake confidence in others? Look for overcompensation. The person who always needs to be the smartest, the strongest, the most certain, the one who cannot admit mistakes, the one who grows defensive when questioned. These are signs of guilt and insecurity, not true strength. And how do you avoid falling into this trap yourself? Practice the Stoic art of humility. Admit mistakes quickly. Accept ignorance without shame. Let go of the need to appear flawless. The paradox is that the less you need to perform confidence, the more confident you actually are. Aristotle believed that virtue lies in balance. Not too much, not too little, but the right measure. Applied here, confidence in balance is steady, humble, and real. Too little confidence is weakness. Too much, especially when it's loud and defensive, is usually guilt in disguise. The balance is found when you live in truth, honest about your strengths, honest about your flaws. In relationships, this truth is transformative. The partner who never apologizes, who insists on always being right, isn't truly secure. They're hiding guilt under the mask of superiority. The friend who dominates every conversation isn't brimming with certainty. They're terrified of being unseen. Once you understand this, you stop being fooled by the performance. You see the guilt beneath the mask, and you respond not with intimidation, but with clarity and compassion. So remember this. When someone looks unshakable, look closer. If their confidence is defensive, brittle, or aggressive, it's probably built on guilt. Real confidence doesn't need to shout. It doesn't fear mistakes. It doesn't collapse under criticism. It simply exists, steady and quiet, like a mountain. And the strongest people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who look perfect. They're the ones who no longer need to pretend. Truth 10. Exaggeration reveals insecurity. We've all heard those sweeping declarations people love to make. I never care what people think. I'm always happy. Nothing ever bothers me. At first, those words might sound strong, even admirable, but if you listen closely, you start to notice a pattern. The more absolute the claim, the less likely it's true. Real strength doesn't need to exaggerate. Real happiness doesn't need to be shouted. Exaggeration, more often than not, reveals insecurity. It's the ego turning up the volume, trying to drown out the quieter truth that lives underneath. Think about how this shows up in everyday life. The friend who constantly declares they're so over someone usually isn't over them at all. The co-worker who repeats, "I never get stressed," is often the one who secretly loses sleep every night. The person who insists they always tell the truth is often hiding something. When you hear absolutes, pay attention. They're often compensations, confessions disguised as declarations. Seneca saw through the trap of exaggeration centuries ago. He wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." Exaggeration deceives us in the same way. It paints life in extremes, when in reality, life is full of nuance. To say, "I'm always happy," is to deny half of what it means to be human. To say, "I never struggle," is to hide from the truth that everyone struggles. By exaggerating, people reveal their discomfort with life's balance, their refusal to admit imperfection. Let's take a closer look at why people exaggerate. At its core, exaggeration is a plea. It's someone saying, "Please believe this about me because I don't fully believe it myself." If they were truly confident, truly happy, truly at peace, they wouldn't need to make such bold declarations. Real confidence is quiet. Real joy doesn't need constant advertisement. It simply exists. But here's the deeper insight. Exaggeration isn't just about deceiving others. It's often about deceiving ourselves. We repeat absolutes because we're trying to convince ourselves of them. "I never care what people think" becomes a mantra, not because it's true, but because the speaker desperately wishes it were. In that sense, exaggeration is self-deception spoken aloud. Consider relationships. Imagine someone constantly saying, "I don't need anyone. I'm perfectly fine on my own." Sometimes that's true, but often, the louder the claim, the more it hides the opposite. A longing for connection, a fear of vulnerability. Or think about someone who declares, "I'm always honest." If you watch closely, you'll often find they're bending the truth somewhere. The exaggeration is a shield, not a mirror. Exaggeration is a misuse of power, the power of words. Instead of using words to reveal truth, exaggeration twists them to hide truth. But the irony is that in hiding, it also reveals. The louder the exaggeration, the more fragile the truth underneath becomes visible to anyone paying attention. Now, what does Stoicism teach us about dealing with this? First, don't take exaggerated claims at face value. Read the insecurity beneath. If someone says, "I'm always happy," hear the whisper, "I'm afraid of admitting when I'm sad." If someone says, "I never need help," hear the quiet truth, "I don't know how to ask for help." By learning to hear what exaggeration hides, you see people more clearly. Second, examine your own exaggerations. When do you use absolutes? Do you tell people, "I don't care," when you actually do? Do you insist, "I'm fine," when you're struggling? These exaggerations are windows into your own insecurities. Let's think about how this applies to leadership. A leader who constantly insists, "I always know what to do," is not leading from wisdom. They're leading from insecurity. The truly wise leader can say, "I don't know," without shame. Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire in the world, yet he wrote daily reminders to himself of his flaws, his fears, his need for humility. That's true confidence, grounded, quiet, real, the opposite of exaggeration. Carl Jung pointed out another important truth. Where your fear is, there is your task. Exaggeration often points directly to fear. If someone exaggerates their independence, they fear dependence. If they exaggerate their happiness, they fear sadness. If they exaggerate their honesty, they fear being seen as dishonest. The exaggerated statement reveals the very place where fear lives. If you listen with discernment,
Where are you?
you can learn more from exaggeration than from any carefully crafted speech. Here's a practice worth trying. Next time you hear someone use an absolute, I never,
Okay.
I
Where are you?
ask yourself,
At the.
what are they really saying? What insecurity lives underneath this claim?
I love you.
And in your own speech, catch your absolutes. Instead of saying, I never care what people think, try admitting, sometimes I care too much.